I told him, okay, so you have Bitcoin, and if I'm gonna explain to you what Stacks is, just think of it as like the girlfriend of Bitcoin.
So, hello everyone, welcome to the Five Professor Joe community. Today, I invite the most friendly guys in Stacks, who is Luis. He has been working at Stacks Foundation as growth leader for about 4 or 5 years. Hello, Luis. How are you doing today?
Hello. I practice a little bit of Korean, so I want to say it to everybody. So 안녕하세요, Stacks Korea community to the Korea community, Yolobon.
I think it is perfect. Your
Yeah.
pronunciation is perfect. Yeah. So, of course, we have the Bellamy, who is working with me for a while. Hello, Bellamy.
Hi, Professor Joe. Glad to be here again. And hi, Luis.
Okay, so we do have 30 minutes for the interview with the Luis. So I think we can start from the questions. Let's start.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Professor Joe and Luis. Again, very nice to meet you. Maybe you could introduce yourself very quickly to the Korean community.
Yeah, no, so to introduce myself, I'm currently the growth lead at Stacks Foundation, and I'm also known as like the co-founder for Writer. If you're familiar with the Stacks ecosystem, you've probably seen me in Discord or Twitter with my handle Luis Nakamoto, where I actually give like ecosystem updates about the community. That's me on a nutshell.
Thank you very much. I think you have a very interesting profile and very extensive experience in the
Yeah.
in this industry. Could you kind of guide us into your journey into crypto and how you got involved with Stacks Foundation?
Yeah, perfect. So my background is actually IT, and then I did a master's on green IT. So green IT means specifically is we were trying to compute the carbon emission of a Google search, right? So that's like my background. And then I work with various startups from Asia and America as well, but I'm currently living in Amsterdam. So to backtrack, I actually knew Bitcoin in 2016 and I did the whole shebang in 2017. I don't know if you guys were there, Professor Joe or Bilali, but I can actually remember it as clear as a day, right? Back in 2017, it was like the ICO craze, right? And then when you go to conferences, they do like decentralized this, decentralized that, and every project was actually releasing their own white paper. And from that moment on, it actually piqued my interest. Back in 2017, 2016, I was still working in like the IT infrastructure company as a business analyst, but I was studying at the same time, and I did a special research on Web 2 and Web 3 in general. And I did tons of study when it comes to, okay, how do we actually achieve an authentic sharing economy in the current web, or how do we actually reach the breaking point or like the current platforms? And the conclusion based from my research always goes back to the same thing, right? So the same thing, the conclusion was, okay, cryptocurrencies will actually solve the problems of Web 2, a lot of it. And then the other conclusion was users can actually realize that they're commodities on the current internet. So that's like kind of like my background. And then moving on to 2018, I actually saw a TED Talk of Munib on YouTube where he talked about the decentralized internet. And it just resonated with me a lot because I did the whole research on it. And I was, if I want to go into crypto, I would want to work on a project that I believe in. And that was Blockstack for me before Stacks, which is known as Stacks now. And I think the approach was just, I think, brilliant because when everybody was talking about scalability in 2017, Blockstack already did the opposite. So they did everything off the on-chain and they only utilized the chain for like all the things that should be utilized it for, right? So for example, your identity, whatsoever. And I think the execution for me was quite impressive because when it comes to crypto, I think a lot of teams build on quicksand, and it's not sustainable. And Stacks is like carefully R&D. We did the first token sale with like the SEC and those things actually, yeah. But then when I went to Blockstack, they weren't hiring, right? They're like, oh yeah, we're not hiring. So I was just like a community member, like you, Professor Joe and Bellamy, and I contributed for like 4 months until the guys picked me up, and then I became a team member. And I've been with the guys for 4 years now. So that's how I started in crypto. And yeah, that's like the preface for it.
It's really interesting, and I think we all kind of started similarly in this 2016-17 period when the whole crypto market was crazy. I think that's the similar story for everyone. But what's special about you is that you ended up at Stacks. And so what is Stacks for beginners, and what's the narrative and the story of Stacks?
Yeah. So this is always, I think, very hard, right? Because when I explain crypto to my friends, it's always difficult for them to understand. So for me, I try to explain it in like a super, super high level. I told them, okay, so you have Bitcoin, and if I'm gonna explain to you what Stacks is, just think of it as like the girlfriend of Bitcoin, right? It actually makes it better. So it's like two separate person, but combining them, you make like a really great couple. And that's how I explain Stacks. Now, if we go to the technicalities, we can say that's in a nutshell, Stacks actually makes Bitcoin programmable. Because for us, the question was always, okay, how do we actually make Bitcoin more valuable? How do we add utility to it aside from being a digital gold thesis, right? Or a hedge against inflation? How do we sustain its market or increase its market dominance against other cryptocurrencies such as Ethereum, Solana, and others, right? So what Stacks does is we actually bring back innovation to Bitcoin, because we enable apps and smart contracts on it. So you can actually think of it as a layer 1.5, because we don't just extend Bitcoin functionality like layer 2 out there, such as Lightning. It actually makes it more expressive. So with Stacks, Bitcoin now enters the arena of DeFi, NFT, DAOs, DIDs, and much more. So yeah, I think that's it in a nutshell. We can deep dive later on the technicalities for the various verticals, but that's it for us. You can just imagine that we're trying to bring like the pre-2017 era for Bitcoin, where you have protocols such as like Mastercoin, Counterparty, who actually develop contracts and build tokens on top of Bitcoin.
Your explanation is very clear and then very super direct to understand. So what Stacks is, and then let me. So can I use your quotes when I explain the Stacks to the users? Because the when at the beginning you said the Stacks is the kind of the girlfriend of the Bitcoin. That is very clear the points. For me, so I want to use that quotes.
Yeah, definitely, because I think it's always confusing for other people. They always ask us, is Stacks is like a layer 2, layer 1? What is it, right? For us, if I'm gonna explain it, it's two separate person, and it's being connected by proof of transfer, which is their relationship. And that's how when I explain Stacks to another, it's an independent chain. It's not a side chain, but it's connected through Bitcoin through proof of transfer.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. I think what's interesting about Stacks is that you are working on normally projects work to grow their layer 1, but you work with a boyfriend that's already very much grown, and you are trying to grow the girlfriend. Hopefully at the same level of the boyfriend.
Yeah.
And you are the growth lead at Stacks. It's a very strategic position, and I'd say one of the most important positions for a project like Stacks that needs to grow. Could you tell us what was the most memorable event that happened when we were working and you are working as the growth lead of Stacks?
Yeah, I mean, I think just like you, I was a community member, right? So for me, the most important events is like the post mainnet, launch mainnet, and then the pre mainnet, because you actually see the growth of a protocol. And I think for me, I was always remember it like when Stacks was still very young. You do meetups. We held so I was a community guy before I became a growth lead. So I was actually putting up meetups for people. There were like maybe like 4 people in the room, and then we were trying to explain Stacks. And then after launching the master design last January 14, 2021, where we enable smart contracts in Bitcoin, you can actually see a lot of developers flock into the ecosystem because of the main proposition. And now I can't even count the members, that are actually building on Stacks. Before I know everybody, and now I don't know everybody, which I think is a good problem to have. And I think that was like always memorable. And for me, I think we're super close in opening the floodgates. So meaning the floodgates when Stacks will go mainstream, because now we're seeing hyper growth. If I'm going to give you a little bit of numbers in terms of the growth of Stacks since mainnet last January. So if we look at the number of smart contracts before mainnet, and on the release of mainnet, it was actually hovering around 150 smart contracts. And then if we look at it from like last week, a snapshot, it's actually at around 3,235 smart contracts built on Stacks. And then if you look at the network addresses, we actually increased by 120,000 addresses on Stacks already. So there's currently 417,000 Stacks addresses in the network. And then if we look at the number of TVL lock on Stacks, it's sitting around 478 million Stacks token, which is actually 30% of the token supply for Stacks. And the Bitcoin rewards being given to the network participant is almost 1,514 Bitcoins. And that actually equates to almost 58 million US dollars at the moment. And yeah, and we also crossed 1 million transaction on the network. And yeah, I mean, in compared to other network, it's still quite small, but I think in terms of the projects building on Bitcoin, we're named as like the #1 Web3 project on Bitcoin, which I think is good.
That's some very impressive numbers and very strong growth for a short period of time. I think what would be interesting for our